Hello everyone, my name is Sepide and I'm in the DevTools marketing team here at Atlassian. In this webinar, I will go over some of the most popular features in Bamboo that are as useful to teams with hundreds of build projects as to growing teams that are looking for a scalable CI tool. After all, regardless of the size of your team, it's always smart to plan for scale. I will start this webinar with a short description of continuous integration and delivery and what Bamboo offers that makes it a great tool for both continuous integration and continuous delivery. I will then talk about the benefits of integrating Bamboo with Stash and JIRA, different types of agents in Bamboo including Docker agents and how agent dedication works, and finally, I'll go over bulk modification options and Docker tasks that make managing builds and plans much easier by minimizing the manual modification process. So what is continuous integration or CI? Continuous integration is the process of automatically building and testing your software on a regular basis to prevent integration issues. When developers want to make changes, they make a copy of the main repository to work on. After making the changes, that copy goes through tests and builds and should only be merged back to the mainline when those tests and builds are passed. Making this workflow an easy automated process is the main role of any CI tool. So a good tool like Bamboo reduces the risks of running into integration issues by checking new changes frequently. Not only Bamboo is a great continuous integration tool, it also offers first-class support for the delivery aspect of software creation. Continuous delivery is all about the release process, taking a build, mapping it to a version number, and releasing it. In other words, it's the process of automating and improving the cycle of software delivery to make sure the software checked in on the main line is always in a state that can be deployed to users. Deployment projects in Bamboo make this process much easier by allowing users to deploy releases of their software to configured environments. By adopting both continuous integration and continuous delivery, you not only reduce risks and catch bugs quickly, but also move rapidly to a working software. We will go over this shortly, but if you have Bamboo integrated with Stash and JIRA, details like JIRA issues, commits, and approvals follow each release of your application from development to production. So if you're not using a scalable CI tool or no CI tools at all, you better start thinking about it. And not having time to improve is not an acceptable excuse at all. Let's look at the magical integration now. Integrating Bamboo with JIRA and Stash provides traceability and visibility across teams. If non-development staff, for example, project managers, do not want to get involved with the development cycle, they can check the workflow from JIRA independent from Stash and Bamboo platforms, while developers can continue their work in Stash and Ops in Bamboo. This allows each team member to stay within the tool of their choice and keeps the entire product team on top of each issue's implementation, quality, and release status. In my demo here, to show you this workflow, I am going to use SourceTree, which is our Git and Mercurial client for Mac and Windows and makes working with these repo types a lot easier. It's free, and I highly recommend it. One last thing before we jump into details. When installing the applications, make sure you are not deploying multiple Atlassian applications in a single Tomcat container. It is not supported and not recommended. Assuming you have all the applications correctly installed and running, first step to get the integration in place is creating application links. It's a very straightforward process. Start from one application, Bamboo for example, navigate to Administration Overview and select Application Links from under the Add-ons menu. Once there, enter the link to your Stash application and go through the integration wizard. Do the same for JIRA. To have the complete integration loop, if starting from Bamboo, make sure to also link JIRA and Stash. You can create this link from under Administration Application Links in Stash or from under Administration Add-ons Application Links in JIRA. Now that we have the three applications connected, let's start the journey from JIRA. To create your Agile boards, if you don't have them set up yet, you can follow the simple step-by-step instructions under Agile Getting Started to have your boards, issues, and sprints in place. Selecting any issues in JIRA will give us the Create Branch option. Upon selecting Create Branch in JIRA, we will be taken to Stash. As you can see here, branch type is based on the JIRA issue type. Since my issue type in JIRA was New Feature, my branch type is set to Feature by default, but you still have the option to change it. Another very helpful part of this automated process is the way branch names are prefixed with the type of the issue. This feature comes very useful as it creates a naming convention in your workflow and makes it easy to search for branches later. The prefix is then followed by the JIRA issue key and a short description based on my JIRA issue description. Once we are done reviewing and confirming or changing any information here, we select Create Branch. Clicking on Create Branch will then take us to the Checkout Branch step. When creating a new branch, you need to do the checkout to start working on it. This option is available under the Branch menu as shown in the screenshot here. As mentioned earlier, I will be using our free Git client source tree to check out my branch. Source tree will automatically transfer the workflow to the checked out branch. If at any point down the road we decide to switch to terminal or look at any files in Finder, we can simply do so by selecting the terminal or show in Finder options in source tree. To keep things simple, I made some changes to a text file. After hitting save, source tree captures the change and shows a file with uncommitted changes. What we should do now is adding a commit message that includes the JIRA ticket to ensure our JIRA issue gets correctly connected to the source code changes. If you don't remember your JIRA issue key, it's the first alpha number parameter in your branch name. Now, we not only want to push the changes back to the server, but we also want to create a pull request to integrate those changes back to the master branch. This feature is available in source tree under the commit options, so make sure the push changes immediately checkbox is checked and select create pull request from under the commit options menu. Creating the pull request in source tree takes us back to Stash where it shows the pull request details, the commit, and our JIRA issue key. It's now time to add reviewers to have a look at the changes I made before merging the branch back to the mainline. I added my colleagues Turner and Sultan as reviewers here. When selecting Create, Turner and Sultan receive a notification in Stash and also an email informing them about the pull request in case they are not in Stash at the moment. Once we created the pull request, Bamboo, which is connected to our source repository, which is connected to Stash, went ahead and created a branch build for the changes that happened on the branch. The result of this build is showing up on the right-hand side under the Build column. By reviewing the result of this build, Turner and Sultan can check if there are any issues with changes I made on that branch and whether the build is green or not. Since the build is green in this case, Sultan and Turner can now leave a comment and approve the merge with ease of mind, knowing that the build is green and tests are all working. Depending on your team structure, you can add colleagues from any team to review the pull request. They can be team leads, other developers that do code reviews, or the main author of the code. In this case, Sultan is our development team lead and Turner is the project owner. Another option I have here is asking for a final review by mentioning a user in a comment. Like if I want Daniel to have a look at the changes I made, I can just mention him in a comment and wait for his response. Having approvals from all reviewers, We can now merge the branch back to the master. It's always a good idea to clean up our branches when done working with them. So check this box, select Merge, and enjoy reviewing the details of your successful merge. But we're not done yet. Upon this merge, a build gets triggered on the master branch in Bamboo. If our build is connected to a deployment project that has a trigger to run upon a green build on the master branch, the deployment will also run and we can check the result here. Going to the JIRA issue now, it shows the commits, builds, pull requests, and related deployment projects. So, what do you think? I highly recommend at least testing this integration if you don't have it set up already, and can promise you that it will increase your team's productivity and will make your workflow much more clear. Let me close this chapter by showing you a very cool feature. Connecting code to your build is now easier than ever with Bamboo since it automatically discovers repositories and branches when linked to Stash or Bitbucket. So if you are a Stash user and want to try Bamboo or the beautiful integration we just went over, all your repos will show up in Bamboo once you have the Bamboo Stash application link set up. There is also no need to re-enter the repository location and password every single time. Just configure a new repo in Bamboo once and it becomes accessible to all builds by default. Okay, it's now time to move to the next topic and have a look at Bamboo agents. Bamboo build agents are used to execute jobs within your build plan. You can run up to 100 agents depending on the type of license you have. There are different types of agents, but let me start this section by briefly explaining some of the agent features and concepts to help you make a smarter use of your agents and better understand the differences. Depending on the type of project you're working on, you might need to run your builds against different environments, application versions, or test your code with certain executables. Let's say I have a project shaped into a Bamboo build that I want to run in a Mac, Windows, and Linux environment, or against different Java versions. The operating system on my Bamboo server is Linux, and I don't want to install another operating system or different versions of Java. But I can run up to 5 agents to handle the execution of that build. I also don't want to install Mac or Java 5 on all my agents. Scenarios like this are when matching capabilities and requirements come into play. Capabilities and requirements control which agents can execute builds for particular jobs. Each job can only be built by agents that their capabilities match the job's requirements. In other words, a capability is a feature of an agent, and by setting up a capability that matches a job's requirement, we tell Bamboo to match that agent with only that specific plan when allocating jobs to agents. A capability can be defined for an executable, for example Maven, a JDK, a version control system client application, for example Git, or it can be a custom capability, which is a key value property that defines a particular characteristic of an agent. For example, operating system, Windows XP. To give you an example, if I have a job with a capability requirement added, as shown here, and I want this job to be picked up by one specific agent out of my 20 running agents, I go under the Capabilities tab of that agent and add this requirement as that agent's capability. Now, when the job is ready to be picked up, Bamboo will automatically match it with this agent. Awesome, right? Okay, let me show you another great feature that's also very useful for prioritizing tasks and load balancing among agents. There might be times that you want an agent to only run a specific build or deployment project and not be used for any other types of activities. With capabilities and requirements, we can make limitations for matching agents and builds. But if a build is kicked off and there is a free agent that matches the requirements set on that build, it will start running that build. But what if while that build is still running, a deployment project that is way more important than that build and is also matching that agent's capabilities is ready to run. And what if there are no matching free agents to run it? This is when we use the Dedicate Agents feature. When an agent is dedicated to a certain project, plan, job, deployment project, or deployment environment, no other activity will be able to use it unless it is dedicated to that activity as well. Navigate to Bamboo Administration, Overview Agents, select one of your agents, and check out all available agent dedication options under the Dedicate Agent tab. With that information, let's now have a look at different agent types in Bamboo, starting with local agents. Local agents run as part of the Bamboo server. In other words, they run in the Bamboo server's process. When installing Bamboo, a local agent is set up by default to run the builds. Local agents inherit all server capabilities, but you can still add new capabilities or dedicate them to certain builds and projects. Next type of agents are remote agents. Remote agents run in their own processes and usually on computers other than the Bamboo server. To install a remote agent, enable remote agent support, then select Install Remote Agent and follow the instruction that shows up in the UI. It's a very straightforward process. Once the agent is installed and running, it shows up under the Online Remote Agents tab. There are also Elastic Agents. An Elastic Agent is a remote agent that runs in the Amazon Elastic Compute Cloud or EC2. An Elastic Agent process runs in an Elastic instance of an Elastic image. An Elastic Agent is started by creating a new instance of an Elastic image. Creating this new Elastic instance automatically runs an Elastic Agent process in the instance. The agent inherits the capabilities of the image it was created from, and the matching capabilities requirements rule also applies here. A Bamboo build job can be run on an Elastic agent when the capabilities of that Elastic agent meets the requirements of the job. You need an Amazon Web Services account or AWS account to use Elastic Bamboo. Create an account if you don't have one and start setting up your Elastic Bamboo by navigating to Bamboo Administration, Elastic Bamboo Configuration. Ready for some good news? Okay, 1. Bamboo now supports multi-availability zones for customers using virtual private cloud. And 2. We now provide stock images in all regions. With multi-availability zones per region, if one agent request is denied due to high load in an availability zone, Bamboo will now switch to the next availability zone until it can run an instance. Also, prior to Bamboo 5.8, Bamboo stock images were only available in the US East region, but in an effort to make the use of EC2 easier, we now have them available in all regions. It's now time to look at my personal favorite Docker agents. Docker is the open platform for building, shipping, and running applications anywhere using the Docker container technology. Docker agents are basically Bamboo agents running in Docker containers. Since jobs can have different requirements, as mentioned earlier, we wanted to provide an option that simplifies the creation and management of build agents. To list the benefits of using Docker agents, 1. Ease of use. It allows us to script the creation and maintenance of agents. 2. We can duplicate and distribute changes to build agents very quickly. And 3. It enables us to run multiple remote agents on the same host without conflicting requirements. Once we customize an image, or if there is one already available with the capabilities we need for our builds, we can use it as many times as we need and skip the time-consuming manual process of installing specific executables and applications on each agent. This image is clearly showing this concept and the way Docker agents are set up. Each image is a template for the containers. In other words, a container is like an instance of an image. We currently have 2 images on Docker Hub. Once you have Docker installed, use these images to test this feature if you are not using Docker agents already. Same as remote agents, online Docker agents show up under the Online Remote Agents tab. If you need more details about each image or guidelines to run your agent, check out the Image Information tab on Docker Hub. Since we just went over Docker agents, let's start this section with Docker tasks. Docker tasks, which are available for both server and cloud customers, make it really easy to build Docker images and use Docker containers during builds. To list the main functions, these tasks allow us to build our own Docker images, run our own Docker containers, and if satisfied with the result, push those Docker images to a registry to share them within the company, across teams, or with customers. Let's say we have an application that we want to ship. We can compile the application the standard way and produce an artifact. But why not producing a different artifact in the form of a Docker image? Though there are many ways to use Docker tasks, looking at an example should help us better understand the concept. Let's say I have these tasks in one of my Bamboo build plans: a source code checkout task and a Maven 3 task that is generating an artifact. What I can do is just use the generated artifact that I get here. But instead, I can produce a different artifact in the form of a Docker image. Let me show you how. We start by adding a Docker task right after our Maven task to build a Docker image that contains my artifact. Then, we run the Docker container that is based on the Docker image we just created in the previous step. Next step is adding a Maven task to run integration tests against the container. And finally, when happy with the result of all the previous steps and integration tests, we add another Docker task to push my image to Docker Hub or another registry. This was just one simple example, but of course, there are many ways to use Docker tasks for building, running, and deploying applications. Though the setup provided by Docker tasks and the functionality it offers are achievable using the existing command task, our goal was to make it a more pleasant process for you by adding a simple, nicely designed task and a dedicated bundled plugin. Just select the task and choose Build, Run, or Push from the menu. Let's now have a look at some other Bamboo features that can save us hours of plan level modification and configuration time. Bulk actions, as the name suggests, make it possible to edit and apply changes to multiple plans at once. As shown here, there are many bulk action options available in Bamboo. All you need is administration permission. Once you have that, navigate to Bamboo Administration, Overview Bulk Actions, and apply changes to as many plans as you want with a few clicks. Bamboo allows you to share credentials for code repositories by supplying the SSH key and passphrase that you're using to access that repo. Any credentials shared here are available to every plan on your Bamboo server. To access this screen, go to Bamboo Administration Overview and select Shared Credentials on the left-hand side under Build Resources. And lastly, let's look at linked repositories. Linked repositories are now the preferred way to define and share repository configurations in Bamboo. In the long term, plan-level repository configuration will be deprecated, and there will be a Convert to Linked Repository option to convert all your existing plan-level repos to linked repos. To have a look at this feature, go under Bamboo Administration Overview and select Linked Repositories on the left-hand side under the Build Resources section. Let's look at some photo credits before we move to Q&A. All right, I will now open the Q&A panel to answer some of your questions. First question is by David. Can Stash reviewers push the merge, or it will always go back to whoever makes the pull request? Good question. The answer is yes. If your reviewers have write permissions to the repository, which is the case most of the time, they can push the merge. You can also add additional conditions. For example, you can add a certain number of reviewers to approve the changes before the merge, or you can set the number of successful builds you want to see before merging the pull request. To give you an example, if I want to see 5 successful builds or approvals from 5 reviewers, I go under settings pull requests and add these numbers there in Stash. So the pull request cannot be merged if it doesn't pass these conditions. Let's move to the next question. Another question about reviewers is asked by Nitesh. He's asking, what is the maximum number of reviewers I can set up in Stash? Does it matter if the approval does not happen in order? The maximum number of reviewers you can choose in Stash is 9. I hope I'm understanding the second part of your question correctly. It does not matter in which order your reviewers check the code and approve. The last reviewer is always able to push the merge after the rest of the approvals if he or she has write permissions, as mentioned in the previous question. Let's move to the next question. Amir is asking, you use Stash and source tree in the example here. Any quirkiness associated with this combination? Good question. The answer is no. There are no issues as far as we know up to this day. The one thing I want to mention here is since source tree makes Git operations very trivial, just be mindful about resetting or rebasing your branches when working with source tree. That's the only thing to keep in mind. Let's move to the next question. Next question is by Todd. What is the Stash Reviewer Suggester? It's one of our marketplace add-ons. It provides intelligent reviewer suggestions for your pull requests. Feel free to use it, but just keep in mind that it's not supported. So if you have any questions about the usage, you can always go to our community, answers.atlassian.com, and post your questions there. It's a big community of developers and experts, and I'm sure someone will respond to your question there. Next question is by Peter. Very good question. Can you explain Docker agents in an example? Of course. Let's say I have a task that requires Java 7. Instead of having to install Java 7 on all my remote agents running on different hosts and then adding the capability to each agent in the UI, I can just create a new Docker agent image with Java 7, then kill all my old agent containers and start new ones with the image that has the new capability. So basically, the Docker image becomes something like a template for all my remote agents and allows me to distribute changes to all my agents very quickly instead of editing them manually one by one. Let's move to the next question. Mike is asking, I'm setting up only one server for Atlassian products and want to install JIRA, Stash, and Bamboo on the same box to test the integration. Where do I go to set up context paths? Good question. It's a very straightforward process. Just make sure to stop the applications first. Then there is a file called server.xml under the installation directory of all these applications. Just find that file, open it, and search for the phrase context path in the file. And then all you have to do is replacing the most probably empty field or value that you see there with the context path you want to use. Then start the applications and use the new URL, create application links. One thing to check, just make sure that the URL that's saved in the UI for JIRA, Stash, and Bamboo is matching your new context path. For Bamboo, you can check it under Bamboo Administration General Configuration. So yeah, just check both the base URL and the broker client URI values to make sure everything is updated correctly. Okay, let's move to the next question. Let's look at this one by Kathleen. I have Bamboo, JIRA, and Stash connected, and I have deployment projects, but I don't see any deployment panels in JIRA. What am I missing? This might actually happen for different reasons, but I would say first thing to check is your application versions. For the deployment panel to show up, you need to have at least Bamboo 5.4 and JIRA 6.2. So if you're running an older version of these applications, you won't see the deployment panel. But if you are running Bamboo 5.4, JIRA 6.2 or newer versions, and your deployment projects are correctly connected to your Bamboo builds and JIRA issues, but you still don't see the panel, contact our support team and they will probably ask for more details and some log files, and will help you troubleshoot and fix this issue quickly. Move to the next one. This is a good one. Alan is asking, what's the enable remote agent authentication option on the agents page? What is it used for? It's basically for improved security. It's a way to verify that the remote agents are allowed to connect to the Bamboo server. When you enable this feature, Bamboo will prevent any unknown agents from connecting to the server, and all agents will require a manual approval by an administrator before they can talk to the server in any way. Moving to the next question, another one about the remote agents by Kevin. I installed a remote agent during the presentation and it seems to be in a good state. How do I change the name to something more user-friendly? It has the IP address now. Good question. To rename your agents, just go to Bamboo Administration Overview Agents and click on the agent, select the agent, and then select the Edit Details tab. Then just add the new name, select Update, and yeah, that should change the name for you. Next question. Okay, let's have a look at this one by Charles. I have Bamboo and JIRA talking, and we have access to JIRA tickets from Bamboo, but the build tab in JIRA says no associated builds found. Is there a quick fix for this? We are using JIRA 6.2 and can't upgrade anytime soon. The build result information in the JIRA Issues Build tab is basically coming from Bamboo Index. So if the index is out of sync, you might end up not getting any data or just incorrect information. So I would say try running a full reindex in Bamboo by going to, I think it's called indexing or reindexing. It's under Bamboo Administration Overview on the left-hand side. But depending on the size of your Bamboo instance, this might take quite a while, so be prepared for that. And this issue is not related to the version of JIRA you're using, as far as I know. So reindexing should help fix the problem for you. Okay, let's move to the next question. Let's look at the Docker question. It's by Alexandra. I'm new to Docker and I'm trying to use boot to Docker on OS X. Every time I run it, I get a message to export Docker host to connect Docker client and Docker daemon. Can you explain what each of these are, the client, daemon, and host? The client is basically the Docker command installed into OS X. Your boot to Docker VM is the host, and the daemon is a service that runs inside your VM or inside your host. The Docker host variable that you see in that message, that the message is asking you to add or export, is basically telling the client how to connect to the daemon. So if you run Docker directly inside your VM, you don't need it. But if you're running Docker commands from your OS X, then you need it. You have to export it, the variable. I also have a Mac machine, and I had to go through the same setup. So yeah, I ended up adding Docker host to my Bash profile on my Mac. Let's move to the next question, another Docker question. Cohen is asking, if I want to use Docker, does adding it as a capability to existing jobs that have other capability requirements enough to run it? Does adding it as a capability? No. The Docker capability alone does not allow agents to run existing jobs with other capability requirements. Your plans should also be configured to use Docker tasks in place of tasks with specific requirements. You can, of course, combine Docker tasks with other task types in your plan, but to use the Docker capability for a specific task, you need to basically replace that specific task with a Docker task. This is what we call dynamic capabilities, and we don't really recommend it at the moment. But let me give you an example to at least make the concept more clear for you. Let's say I have a gulp task in my plan, and I have selected my Node.js executable, and I have a correct path to my gulp executable. Then if I decide to use a Docker image for this task, I have to replace it with a Docker task in which I add the path to the Docker image that has Node.js and gulp, and I want to use that I want to use. And then maybe in the command section, I add the command that I want to execute in my Docker container. Yeah, I hope this example helps you better understand the setup with dynamic capabilities and using Docker as a capability. Let's move to the next question. Next question is by Nicola. Does Bamboo detect and automatically add capabilities to remote agents? What if I don't want to start the agent with default capabilities? A good question. The answer is yes. Bamboo detects and automatically adds capabilities. But if you want to disable this feature, all you have to do is running the agent with disable agent auto capability detection parameter set to true. When you want to install your agent, you get a standard command, and if you just want to disable auto capability, you need to add this parameter before the jar file. If you search for auto capability detection Bamboo remote agents, I'm sure you can find the documents and look at all the details. But I will also add the link in response to this question in the blog post that we will have for this webinar sometimes next week. Moving to the next question. Let's look at this one by Tony. You talked about triggering a deployment project when there is a successful build on the master branch. Is it possible to trigger deployment projects from other branches? What are trigger options for deployments? Good question. Yes, it is possible to have your deployments triggered by builds on branches other than the master branch. When you select after successful plan as your trigger type, this is basically the trigger type that shows up in the UI. it gives you the option to choose branches. You can choose either master or any other branches to trigger your deployments. The other trigger type you can choose for deployment projects is schedule. So there are two trigger types. One is after successful plan, and the other one is schedule. And with schedule, obviously, you can schedule a trigger on any of your branches to run your deployments. Moving to the next question. Another question about triggers is asked by Priyanka. Is there a way to trigger a single job of a plan in Bamboo? No, it's not possible to trigger a job of a plan. If you have the option, what you can do instead is to move that job to a separate plan and then use the build plan dependencies feature. And what this does is basically allows you to make your new plan a dependent of the main plan or the first plan that you want to run prior to this new plan. So when your first plan or main plan runs and completes, it will trigger your dependent plan. I will add a link to our documentation that is explaining plan build dependencies feature in details if you want to read about it and look at all the details. Let's move to the next question. Brian is asking, I set up new image configurations and customized them, but I can't find any information on how Bamboo selects images or which image configuration it will use when starting an instance. Bamboo basically uses image capabilities to find a matching image. You can also dedicate an image to specific builds. Let's look at another question now. This is a good question by Kim. I'm new to Docker. When I run Docker images, I see images with the same name. Which one will run? Whenever you refer to an image in a Docker command, it assumes that you are referring to the latest tag, unless you provide the tag when running the command. Let's say I see a few Tomcat images when I run Docker images. They all have the same name. If I don't add the tag, it will go for the latest tag. But if I want to, let's say, run Tomcat 8, I have to type docker run tomcat :8 and include the tag. Let's look at this question by Sarah. I'm moving to Bamboo Cloud from hosted Bamboo. How does the build expiry work for Bamboo Cloud? Each Atlassian Cloud subscription includes 25 gig of disk storage, and using more than 25 gig per instance is not currently supported. We are exploring options to offer additional storage above this limit, but it's still a work in progress. You can read more about this in our documents. If you search for Atlassian Cloud Storage Policy, the page will have all the information that you need. Moving to the next question, Sebastian says, I have to run MySQL DB tests, but I don't see MySQL in the list of provided capabilities of default Linux images. Will there be a Linux Elastic image with MySQL capability? We will not distribute an image with MySQL as far as I know, because that would be too specific. But you can install MySQL via yum or the apt-get using the instance setup script that is at the image configuration screen. Ed is asking, where is the working directory when using Docker tasks? How does the build result becomes available to other tasks? Very good question. The container basically mounts the working directory on the host agent's file system, which makes build results available to the agent and other tasks in the job. Next question is by Minji. Is it possible to link JIRA on demand with hosted Bamboo? Yes, it is possible. You need to have administration permission in both applications, and Bamboo should be accessible on either port 80 or 443 for the integration to work. Oh, and one more thing, if you are using SSL, you need a valid certificate. You cannot use a self-signed certificate. Those won't work. Then when all these requirements are in place, you just go to add-ons, application links in JIRA, and you should be able to successfully create the link. Next question is by Noah. I have set up plans so that it automatically creates plan branches when a branch is created from my main Git branch. I want everything to work correctly before integrating Bamboo with Stash and my JIRA instance. I can see up to 5 branches in Bamboo, but if I want to see the next ones, I have to delete plan branches. Why is that? Oh, I think this sounds like you're using a starter license, Noah, which is limited to only 10 jobs. Yeah, that seems to be the problem here. So please have a look at our licensing page. But if that's not the case, yeah, contact our support team, and they will help you find the problem and fix it. Let's move to the next question. Okay, let's look at this one. Next question is by Peter. We are installing Bamboo on a Linux server in our company, and we are concerned about the way script tasks can be used to delete any folder on the server. How can we avoid this? Well, Bamboo runs what your users set up and ask it to run. So dangerous commands can be run in multiple ways. Almost every build tool out there allows you to run some shell commands. But if you really don't trust your users, I would say don't use local agents. Use only remote agents, and run remote agents on non-privileged accounts. This way, you'll limit your potential damage to a single agent. If someone runs, let's say, rm-rf, yeah, it would only affect one agent this way. Let's look at one more question. Stefan is asking, we have self-hosted Bamboo and JIRA, and we are thinking between Stash and Bitbucket. Which one should we go with? Well, the decision depends on what you need and your preferences. And of course, if you want to implement or test the same workflow that I went over here in this webinar, it was with Stash. But both Stash and Bitbucket are great products. We at Atlassian use both of them. To point out some of the differences, one difference is the secure pull request functionality that Stash offers, that I also talked about in response to one of the earlier questions here. It's the ability to add a minimum number of approvals or green builds before any code can be merged back to the mainline. The other difference is, well, you can host Stash in-house, while Bitbucket is hosted in the cloud if you prefer either of those. And maybe one last difference is the simple to use REST APIs that we have in Stash that like enables users to customize the tool. Oh, and before I forget, we launched Stash Data Center recently, and it offers great flexibility, scalability. So if you're looking for a Git code management collaboration tool that scales, massively scales, yeah, have a look at Stash Data Center. Okay, I'm going to end it there, but let's review some of the most important topics we covered in this webinar before we sign out. We talked about end-to-end traceability from plan creation to deployment with Bamboo, Stash, and JIRA integration. We reviewed different agent types and some of the features you can use to speed up and organize your builds. We talked about Docker tasks and went over bulk edit options, shared credentials, and linked repositories that we can use to avoid plan level configurations. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining this webinar. We will send out the recording soon. I'm going to sign out. I wish you all a very good day. Take care.